Welcome to the WineDown, an afternoon podcast where two techie blokes sit down over a bowl of wine and chat about what's happening in the world of tech. Enjoy while Scott and Nick open up about their week in technology.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the WineDown. I'm Nick, and with me I have
Scott.
Hello, Scott. How are you?
Good, thank you, Nick. How are you
Excellent.
going?
I'm very well indeed. So, first question: where are we? What are we drinking?
Hey, guess what? We moved office today.
We did.
It
was way easier moving office when our office fell down. It was so much easier, but this time we've had to move stuff.
There was nothing to move once our office fell down.
Yes. No, good point. So, where are we? Oh, we're at WeWork. We've moved.
We are at WeWork. We actually moved into a WeWork building.
That's very cool.
Yes, it is indeed.
They don't have rules about not drinking wine in the building either, do they?
They don't.
They also don't have rules about how you open the bottle of wine all over the office rules, do they?
Minor issue.
Anyway, what are we drinking?
Look, we are drinking a lovely Chateauneuf de Pape from southern French region. It's a 2019. It's actually quite nice.
It isn't too bad.
You'd buy that again?
Yeah, no, I did. I'd open it differently next time.
Yeah, minor issue.
And if you can see, you probably can't see this on the video, but we didn't have a corkscrew. So Scott's used a screwdriver to push the cork into the bottle.
Well, we actually, to be fair, we do have a corkscrew.
We just can't find it.
Can't find it now that we've actually moved everything.
But it was filled so highly as you pushed it down, it sprayed wine.
It did have a little moment there, didn't it? Oh well, it tastes just as well.
It does. So, what are we talking about today?
So you know what? So last week, I had the privilege of attending an IT conference.
Oh, wow.
Back up on the Sunshine Coast. Yes, people get on planes and you go and actually learn things, and well, that's coming back, which is quite good. So we've done that.
Yep.
And that was. It was good to get a bit of an update of where the industry is, what's been happening in the last couple of years, and so forth. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about some of the key points in there.
Sounds great. Now, the conference you went to, the ARN Edge conference, they do a bunch of independent research for that conference, don't they?
They do. They go and talk to organisations of various sizes. They also talk to the IT partners in the channel. They talk to all different bodies, and they go and sort of what's happening, what are you doing, rate these topics, what are you working on, what are you not working, all this sort of thing. And look, it's good because for us it gives us the ability to see what's in the customer mindset.
Yep.
And in the customer mindset, it also gives them the ability to see, what's in the partner mindset. And hopefully the two are pretty close together and not too far apart on most things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which has been good. But there was a couple of interesting sort of topics out of all of that. And I thought we'd just talk about a couple of highlights, just what people are thinking about, what they're focused on, what they're doing, and to some degree what they're not doing.
That's interesting. So it's kind of what's happening in technology in 2022.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a great title, isn't it?
Look, we could use that as a topic for yes.
I wonder which person in marketing thought of that. Okay, so starting at the top, priorities.
So look, I guess it's no surprise if I sort of mention that security is the number one priority in people's minds at the moment. Mm-hmm. And look, a couple of years ago it was like third on the list. So it's still pretty important, but people are sort of, we've got to make sure things are secure, but we're really more focused on this project or these business issues and so forth. But now it's security. It's make sure we've locked our data down. Make sure we've secured our people. Everybody's working from home. Make sure that that's being done in a secure way that's not going to expose our data or our systems.
That's stopping things like phishing and email scandals all the way up to firewalls and
it's right across the board. It's no longer just about the IT part of it, I think. It's more about the process. It's about the people. It's about the training. It's about educating people about what's not real. Because we're seeing a bit of a sway, and look, we'll talk about this in a separate WineDown episode. But we're seeing a change in the way security is being both addressed by the client side and also at the hacker side, at the bad person side, because there's been so much effort put into securing organisations and locking all those controls down. It's sort of if you're big enough and valuable enough as an organisation, you've done a decent amount of work in that space in general.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're probably not really around anymore these days. So that makes it harder, but there's other avenues of approach. And we'll cover that separately, but it's just interesting seeing all the different ways of doing these things. So anyway, security was up top.
Security is up top, and that's different. When I was at my last conference back in 2020, security was like number 3 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was still one of those things where you kept talking about security and everybody kept nodding, but thinking, that's great, I can spend all this time and effort on security, but ultimately it's not going to get me a single extra dollar of revenue.
Yep.
It's not going to get me another client. It's not going to, yes, but
And
now...
it's been building up, really, since the turn of the millennium.
Microsoft
it
has.
Secure Computing Project. Actually, that was about then. And been growing in importance since then. To now it's number 1.
Yeah, so now it all of a sudden is the key, and everybody's sort of in sync on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the client view is now caught up with the vendor view or the channel view where where people want our clients to be, and you don't get a chance to get away from it now, since you've either got to have insurance or you can actually be liable at a director level for not putting the appropriate things in place.
Yeah, so I think that's quite funky, right? In that, do you think what's happening now is all of the other priorities, when you say security number 1, you think everything's now being seen through that lens of security?
It is. I think security awareness is an item that boards are now a lot more focused on.
Yep.
It may not be their key thought, but if you asked 5 years ago, hey, tell me about your data security, and you probably have at least half of your board going, yeah, that's the IT thing. We don't really know much about that, but I'm sure we're doing something. The other part of it is, if you look at the boards now, they've all got some concept of what's happening. Mm-hmm. They also know which one of the board members is fronting the project, and sort of roughly where they're up to, and they can tell you, yes, we've taken a number of actions, and even in the board reports, especially for the public companies, you look at all the reports there, there's security topics in there.
Wow. And, just 10 years ago, we were talking about Australian boards and having no tech in Australian boards at all, and them being quite like our government in really not understanding technology very well.
Yes.
But that's shifting. So that's that push. We've done the security, but the other trend I'm hearing is the push into what we call CX, or customer experience.
Yeah, so there's, I think, a push, yes, there's a lot more focus on it. So the next sort of topics in those areas, and this is especially true over the last couple of years, where everybody's been working from home, businesses haven't been as actively making sales and doing things the way they used to. Therefore, what are you trying to do? You're trying to protect the clients you've got, making sure that, hey, let's not lose clients in this time. Let's make sure that we can do whatever we can to them. So there's been a lot of focus on the client experience, making it better, improving the way you do things.
Yep.
And that sort of led to a whole new, I'll say, chunk of the industry that's really CX focused. What is the experience your clients are having when they are dealing with you? And when you look at that, so like in the past you may just be selling widgets. And you said, okay, someone walks into your store and they say, I want one widget, and you go, yep, here we go, great. But now sales happen online. How easy was it? How many clicks did they need to do? Could they use credit card and facilities easily? What was the experience like versus the 10 other potential places they could buy a widget from?
Yep.
Because this is the age where simplicity wins. And if you can just go tap, 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 hey, this thing's turning up, all of a sudden you've just got a big boost ahead of your competitor, and you don't know why, because it may not even be as good a product.
Well, and that's what people want, right? People want that ease. People don't want to spend time on the phone. They don't want to talk to people. People are now so used to QR codes and ordering online and all of those sorts of things. If you as a business aren't doing that securely, then you missed a trick.
Well, that's it. So the big focus around the client experience, and that's been going for a couple of years now. It's kept its head in those like top 3, top 4 key items. I don't think it's going away soon, but I do think there's a lot more maturity in that space now, that the underlying tools to provide a really great client experience have they've been around for a while. They've had chances to mature, and a lot of people have implemented them. So, yeah,
Cool. That's interesting. So that's I kind of get a feel there's been a shift in the customer base. They're moving from the old protect phase, which you've had for the last 2 years, where they're just
Yes.
trying to keep hold of whatever revenue they've got because of COVID and stuff, and they're now into a kind of grow phase, right?
Well, they have, and this sort of links into, I guess, the whole client experience part as well. What we've also seen with this grow thing is that, okay, we've been spent the last couple of years, as you said, protecting our customer base. We want to grow, but how do we grow?
Yep.
And in those last 2 years, if you weren't working on your digital transformation efforts, if you weren't like updating your applications, if you weren't in there modernising the way you do things, making your processes more efficient, putting some automation in the business, then you're going to have a trouble existence sort of now, because the businesses that have are now starting to boom. We're seeing that exponential growth, or that really, hey, we've sorted out all these issues in the background while everybody else was sort of doing whatever they're doing. Now we're ready for the next advanced level of how do we conquer this market using approaches that generally weren't available to us before.
Yep.
I think I mentioned once before, we had a client a long time ago who said, hey, I want to get a website, I want to put all of our goods and items on it, and how do we make sales happen there? I said, well, let's look at stage one. Well, we can certainly do that, but where's your inventory now? And they said, in that book over there.
Yes,
I
I
said,
remember this
okay,
one.
and this is the thing. And if you haven't sorted out the digital transformation part at the back end, I said, well, let's say people go to your website. What are they going to do? How do they know? You can't have someone watching a screen saying, someone just asked, how many items of those do you have in stock? And send a runner off to go look in the book, work out the number and come back and type it in as a response.
Yep.
That's just not going to work. So really, if you haven't updated the back end of your operation to be efficient and to catch up and to enable the modern transformations, then you're sort of a bit stuck now.
Yeah, so that's the trick. We do a lot of work at the moment on that back end. And I see, it's funny, you talk about innovation, right? And people think of innovation as innovation in end user experience or customer experience and that type of innovation. There's so much innovation you can do in the back office.
Oh, absolutely.
That's kind of boring and not very interesting, but boy, it makes a difference.
It makes a big difference in the efficiency of your operation, and which means when you do start to hit the more modern go-to-market elements, you're doing it faster, you're producing faster, you're delivering faster, and you're now the business that the consumer of your goods is looking at going, hey, that was easy, that was quick.
Yep.
Yeah. Look at Amazon, they can deliver something within 2 hours. I was in San Diego a few years ago, half an hour.
Yeah.
And my wife clicked on something on the website and it says, hey, what's this 2-hour delivery thing? And I was going, oh, really? Come on. Okay, tick it. Let's see what happens. Well, she was an Amazon Prime thing, and tick. And literally half an hour later, there's a courier at the door with a box. And you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
I mean,
and I've done that even in Australia where everything's really slow. But on Amazon, ordering something and it appearing that day.
Yes.
Which is really, in this world, unbelievable.
Well, and then you look at how Amazon runs its warehouses.
Yeah.
Which is a whole
Robots
separate topic.
and
It's
all sorts of
an
exciting
automated
things.
warehouse. It is quite amazing. So you look at all of that and you sort of go, okay, they've driven that level of efficiency, automation. They haven't got any elements in their sort of, I guess, order to cash process that don't need to be there. And you can see the results accordingly. So, innovation is the key to success. Yes.
It is. It is. So, and that change leads to people. So there's another trend. People not doing. If your business is doing today the same thing it was doing 2 years ago,
yes,
then you're 2 years behind competitors that have innovated. Now, I will say, to qualify it, some people's unique selling proposition is I'm an accountant in the local area, or I'm the only car mechanic within 100 kilometres. And so that's a little bit different. But the last thing you want is somebody coming and setting up and beating you to things, right?
Yeah, and look, I even think things like the accounting professional services firms, accounting, legal, to some degree even medical, what's stopping someone saying, oh, yeah, but I don't want to have to go to the local person. Why can't I just do it online?
Yep.
Why can't I just travel around to whatever I'm doing and just send stuff in online? What is the physical presence doing when it's adding value? Is it adding value? Like I can get it for a doctor. You've got to be there to, for example, have an operation maybe.
Yes, but there's online e-health as well. So
that level
you
of
don't
yes.
just have to necessarily be there. And I've got a relative of mine who does psychologists and dietitians and things like that, and that's all done online. Has been through COVID, but even continuing to be now, and that's working quite well.
Yeah, I'm even seeing the modern law firms now that have started up in the last sort of few years. There is no office. As in you don't go anywhere. You schedule a video conference style meeting.
Yep.
You can upload any documents. And they're real people.
Well, I know an accounting firm set up by a friend of mine that's now done so well out of doing that. They never meet their customers. They've now bought 3 other firms.
There you go.
And basically they're buying the firms for the customer list, and the staff are going because they don't need that many staff because they're
Probably saving on the rent, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's interesting because I know that in the IT industry, we actually have some skills shortages.
We always moan about this, but we've got crazy skill shortages. I remember Greg Miller coming to see us at CompTIA when we first started CompTIA. And Greg Miller worked for SAP, but he did this Young IT Explorer, it was called. And it was a competition for kids at school to come up with innovative IT ideas. And the reason they did that was they predicted by now we'd be missing, I think, 700,000 jobs in IT. And now we're missing about 700,000 jobs in IT. We don't have people to fill them. But it's interesting what we can't fill. It's not every role. Everybody goes, it's really hard to find developers, and I'll hire them. It's hard to find them. But the roles now we can't find are project managers and business analysts and those types of roles.
That's it. And we've got issues right at the moment because of all the there's restrictions around people coming in on visas, no migration workers coming in, as we've had in the past, which means, hey, we either are now doing things remotely or we've got to work out how do we work with what we've got and do it smarter.
And Greg's skill shortage number he was coming up with didn't take into account a pandemic or migration. It took into account what was normally happening. So it's worse than that now.
I saw a number last week which was about 840,000 or something like that, which is sort of in line.
That would be about right.
Yeah, they're real shortages, and where we've seen in the past organisations saying, I don't want to outsource to the Philippines or to India or to whatever because I've either been there and it hasn't worked, or for whatever reason in their particular business they've not managed to make that successful. They're now looking at going, I may have to.
Yeah,
I may have to go back there because I just can't get the people I need.
But we're also working on projects now where we've got organisations who are outsourced, not necessarily in IT, but in back office operations. Yes. And we're writing technology to basically bring that onshore, but without people.
Well, that's the next evolution. I mean, the stage one was, yes, I've got a good business, but I've got all these manual processes. How do I make my operation more efficient? So well, you could outsource it to a country where the labour cost is lower. Okay, but let's think a bit further. Why not redevelop the process so you don't need so much manual elements?
And I think we can also use, it's quite funny, one of the examples I used earlier, when you say labour cost is lower, that's assuming the same amount of time for the same amount of output.
That's very true.
And sometimes that's true, don't get me wrong, and sometimes it's really not. So you've got to be very careful. Lots of people get fixated on the hourly rate. But as I said, an hour of a junior developer versus an hour of a senior developer are very different levels of output.
No, look, absolutely.
And so when you, for example, our team that we run really purely with seniors, although I've got a junior now, versus a team which is mid-level to juniors, they'll take 40, 50 hours to deliver something of inferior quality that my team might deliver in 5 or 6 hours. So it's a real difference there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It can cost, in theory, more in your mind, but in the end, it doesn't actually cost more.
No, it doesn't.
In fact, you end up saving time and money.
Yeah, and it's important to chat about that because while we talk about all this innovation and all those things, lots of business owners think, I know I need to build a website or an app or this or that or the other and rush out to Fiverr.com or Upwork or one of these offshoring things because they look crazy cheap when you start and go and get something built. And I could tell you I have several people a week come to me and say, I've just spent 50, 60,000 on this. I've run out of money. Can you fix it? And 9.9 times out of 10, I go, No, that's a rewrite to actually get to where you want to be, and that's a problem, right?
But and does that sort of lead into? I mean, as this is the point you mentioned before, there's a significant lack of business analysts.
Yes.
And project managers, and you think, hang on, why do we need? I just need developers to go. No, you don't.
No.
You really need your business analyst to map your processes out, to understand what the inputs are, understand what the outputs are, so that when you're actually giving it to a developer, they've got a chance of actually reproducing what you do.
Yeah, you also want to box what developers do, right? And being nice to my team and other teams of developers, you don't want to let developers invent, create, and deliver your project from start to finish. That's not a developer role. There's lots of different roles in there. So you've got developers, testers, BAs, PMs, business analysts, project managers, architects, and all of that group goes together to build a product, not just a developer. And the number of other orgs I see who go, well, we've got our single developer guy, and I go, well, who's testing? Well, the developer guy is. Yeah, you get all sorts of stuff like that. So it's important to have those kind of teams around those sorts of things.
Yeah, I wrote it, it compiled, it must work.
Yeah. Anyway, enough of that.
So I guess, but having sat through like quite a lot of sessions last week and looking at all the topics, all the discussions we had with industry leaders, with vendors, with other partners, even some clients, there was one thing of which there was really very little focus on and only popped up really a couple of times.
Let me guess, it's the traditional IT stuff.
It's all the standard
laptops,
IT.
desktops, switches, routers, networks, printers.
All that basic level foundational IT
Because
stuff.
nobody really cares.
No, it's not a topic anymore. You've got to have that. They're like it's table stakes to actually play in business these days.
Yep.
No one's going around saying you should buy the blue laptop versus the red laptop because of this, and this, and but it still surprises me the number of clients we come across that want to talk about why not that screen versus this versus. They're the wrong discussions.
People will come to me and say, what should I look for when I'm looking for a laptop? I said, a keyboard you like. Ah, really? Yeah, that's good because you're going to type on it, right? So you want something that ergonomically suits you. Oh, so how do I find that out? Go to JB Hi-Fi or Harvey Norman and play on every computer you can find till you find one that works for you.
Yeah, that's just it. I couldn't imagine going to, like if I bought an ABC car and taking it back to the dealer for its first service and saying, these wheel nuts are just a little interesting. Can you do a red wheel nut instead of a blue wheel nut? And can you use this oil instead of that oil and whatever? Who does that?
Yeah. And then that's the same. And so this was explained to me many moons ago by a lady called Pauline Tan, who used to be head of IDA, which is the Infocom Development Authority in Singapore, part of the Singapore government. And Pauline Tan said her vision for technology, she's a very smart lady, was what we call utility computing. Computing that works just like the telephone and the power does. Yep. You flick a switch and it happens. Right? Back in the time she was talking about that, computing was still very, and computing started in laboratories, and really it's taken a while to get itself out of the laboratory and become mainstream. Now cloud's really helped that.
Yeah, it has. So I guess stop looking at what brand or flavour of PC you're buying.
Nobody cares.
Focus on automating your business, making it more efficient, driving bigger outcomes.
For God's sake, don't buy the cheapest PC and don't buy the most expensive. And just buy something in the middle with a nice screen and keyboard. And they don't all have to be the same. They can be different because it doesn't matter anymore.
That's right. It's all in the cloud.
Yep.
As we showed when we moved in 2 hours today.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
We do have a bit of stuff, but still it was...
we've got to get rid of some of that.
It wasn't as if we had rooms full of systems driving our business.
No, which is cool. So the focus is not on PCs, not some, what they call it, feeds and something.
Speeds and feeds?
Speeds and feeds. There we go. There's an IT term for...
there's a topic for a wine. Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. But the focus needs to be on automating the business because that's where the bang for the buck is.
Yeah. So what do you think the future looks like here then?
Wow. It's not... Well, I'd say the future's not doing the same stuff you do today a little bit better. I think we've already seen disruption in so many industries like Uber, like Amazon, who've, if we'd have said around the turn of the millennium, in fact, that happened. Everybody said, we're all going to be buying online, and it caused this massive crash, and everybody sat back and went, that's a fad, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not a fad now because I buy very little in physical shops now, and more people do.
I can't remember the last time I went into a physical store. I'm sure I did at some point. I must have. But
it was funny, I was talking to my wife's mum, who's elderly, and she does all of her shopping online. because it's brilliant for her. So the people you think wouldn't do it are doing it. So it is fascinating.
I have a slightly the opposite issue. I have people ringing my mother, who's quite elderly as well now, and they thought, well, there's a problem with your computer. And she'll quite happily talk to them for half an hour. No. At which point they'll say, okay, but about the computer. She says, but I don't have a computer. But she loves talking to people, so
that's cool. That's cool.
Anyway,
that's cool. So I think it's and this has been said over and over again, and you don't believe it until it happens. But if you don't disrupt your own business, somebody's going to disrupt your business. So you've got to look at that automation and all of those bits and pieces to really change what you do. So taxi to Uber, online bookstores to Amazon.
I'll tell you what, 5 years ago, maybe even 5, 6, 7 years ago, would you have thought the person across from you crazy if they said, hey, get your phone, go tap, 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 and in 10 minutes, someone will deliver a Big Mac to you?
Yeah, no, that would be stupid.
Yet, what's one of the key items on Uber Eats? People order McDonald's.
Well, exactly, and menu log and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
The other, who actually reminded me as you were talking there, these monumental shifts in how we operate now that we'd never have thought of. And I saw a great magazine article from 1963 predicting the mobile phone. Right? And everybody thought that was stupid. But all of those enabling technologies, and it really comes back to all the things we've been doing in technology have converged to enable these experiences, and businesses have jumped on them to enable them to deliver it. So it is a paradigm shift.
It is. And the businesses that have taken advantage of the paradigm shift are the ones that are going boom now.
Yep.
And those that haven't are going, well, hang on, where'd that business come from? They weren't here a few years ago, and now they're 10 times my size.
Well, exactly. There's retail food stores which have no shop front.
Yeah,
right? So there's a whole bunch of them appearing. They're called dark kitchens, and Uber Eats will pick up from them, or Menulog will pick up from them, and they'll deliver to your home, and they'll have a brand, and they'll do all sorts of nice stuff, and they won't exist. You just won't. There'll be in some industrial area somewhere. You won't even know where they are. That kind of stuff. Who'd have thought that would happen, right?
And if you look at the cost of what used to be prime real estate for eating places, all of a sudden that's gone.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's funny, isn't it? So you've got to keep up, right?
You've got to keep up. Don't fall behind. I say, be the competition. Don't be looking at what your competition does.
Yes. And have the courage to implement.
Yes, think big, think bold, have that courage.
And do it. And spend the money, because it will come back to you in spades.
Absolutely.
Cool. That was awesome. Thanks,
Yes,
Scott.
thank you, Nick. That's wonderful.
And thank you for listening or watching with us today. If you do like what you see, please leave us a like, please subscribe, and leave us a comment if there's a topic you'd like us to discuss. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.